everyone. I'm Kim Coghill with ACA International in the Washington, D.C. office. ACA is the leading voice for the accounts receivable management industry. Before we get started on today's podcast about gamification, I'd like to remind you that registration is open for the 2019 Spring Forum and Expo featuring Campus ACA Academy. This will be March 13th through 15th in Las Vegas. For additional information, please visit our website at www.acainternational.org. In today's episode of ACA Cast, Rosso May, the managing editor of Collector Magazine, will moderate a discussion about using gamification technology to train employees. Anne, I'll turn it over to you.
Today we're talking about how ACA International members are using gamification products to train their employees. Now, when I say gamification, I'm talking about technology that takes concepts and elements from recreational gaming products, fun games you might play on your phone like Candy Crush or Song Pop, and incorporating some of those gaming mechanics into your employee training and education. I reported on this topic for a Collector Magazine article last year. And I recently spoke with Debra Ciskey, Compliance Officer for Wakefield and Associates, and Christian Lehr, Chief Operating Officer for Healthcare Collections, about how they use this technology and what benefits it brings. One note, while they both happen to use the same product, there are multiple vendors out there offering gamification training products for our industry, many of which are ACA members. Here's Debra Ciskey.
The product that we use is called Eterna, and it's by a company called Learn.net. So the gamification elements of our product are subtle. So Eterna allows you to feed questions to your collectors at a schedule of your choosing. We choose to send a question out, one question on Tuesday, one question on Thursday, so it doesn't really take a lot of time. Right now, the questions we use are all compliance-related questions, and they're multiple choice or true and false questions. So they get the question, they respond, single-click response, and then they get feedback immediately whether they got the question right or wrong. And then the gamification comes in, provides them with their rank among all the participants. It tells them their compliance score. It tells them how far they are through the program. That sets up a little bit of competitive spirit. I would say a little bit. It's not a giant competitive thing. I think the competition most comes in when they take a question and they don't agree with the answer. So they try to game the product more than see kind of how they're doing against their colleagues. However, they do like it when they get their certificates that say you've got a 100% score, you've completed the program, then the program just starts over for them.
We're doing it slightly differently. We're sending out a question every day for our employees. I know they have multiple schedules. We're doing it for compliance-related questions as well, both, let's call it external compliance, so FDCPA, HIPAA, things of that nature, and we also do it for internal compliance with our own policies, procedures, and work instructions. We have a test for that as well. And the test that Eterna has, or the structure that it has that we use, if I can go into a little more detail, the individual subjects are tested for our employees, and it's not just collectors, it's all of our employees, including myself, in sections. So we have an FDCPA test that we go through, and they will stay on that test until they complete it. And all of our employees go through all of the tests at the same time. So when they get one wrong, it will force them to answer that question again. So they have two scores, a score on how many they got right and how many they missed, and then a compliance score, which tells them eventually that they got all of them right. And they're not allowed to go past that particular test until they've gotten all of the answers right. So those two scores are what we try to promote. And much like Debra said, we don't have a tremendous competitive streak in a collections office. Obviously, with the collectors, the competitive streak is their revenue. Trying to change that mindset to let them know that compliance is also a very important piece to that. But there is a mild level of competition. The certificates that they receive at the end, that is something they display with a surprising amount of pride, given their sort of lack of competitiveness between themselves on the scoring of the tests.
Game-based training products can help you uncover valuable data about your employees. As I wrote in my Collector Magazine article, to provide effective compliance training, companies need to understand the peaks and valleys of their employees' knowledge, and that's where gamification tools really shine. games can help you identify trends as they are happening and give you valuable data on employees' weaknesses. This can alert you to issues before they get out of hand. Here, Debra and Christian tell us how they see that play out in their own companies.
Informal education people had over the years on the FDCPA and the FCRA and things they were sure that they knew that they didn't. That, we've done training, we've done FDCPA and FCR training on all the new hires and thought we had them all done, but there were some persistent myths that I've got employees who've been here with me 10, 15 years. That's not what I was told. That's not how I remember it. So there was a little bit of that discovery early on in the process, and it really helped to eliminate a lot of that.
I really feel like it helps to bring consistency in the knowledge base, and that to me is key.
Almost 70% of Americans play video games on at least one type of device, according to a recent study. Clearly, it's a big part of our culture. Here, Christian explains how his compliance trivia product helps motivate and engage his employees.
I think it helps participation. It keeps the boredom factor lower, which in my experience with training is always the devil in the details, trying to get them to not only look like they're paying attention, but actually pay attention so that they retain the data and that the gaming really encourages participation.
A study from the University of Colorado Denver Business School found that people trained on video games have higher knowledge level and retain information longer than workers learning in other environments. How does this work for accounts receivable management companies?
I think it makes it more memorable, and that, that's the hardest thing with training, especially training related to the law or a lot of facts. You want people to remember things, but providing it in a way that's experiential, like through the games, just makes it more memorable.
In the traditional training we used to do, which was down whether it was with an instructor in a group or whether it was one-on-one with an instructor or one-on-one with a training product, it became apparent pretty quickly that the patient and the level of attentiveness went down quickly, again, especially with collectors who are looking to get back on the phone, get back to work and attempting to collect. So this has been a tremendous help for us. It is very quick for the individual question we send out in the morning for everybody to answer when they first get in. It shouldn't take them more than a few minutes. For us, it's not so much that they get the answer right because they've memorized it, although that ideally is what happens. But we're using it more as a diagnostic tool. What is it that they may be deficient in? And we want to make sure that we teach them. So it's not so much a test as in you have no opportunity to look for answers. We often tell them that it's an open book test. We encourage you, especially for some of the more esoteric subjects like the Service Members Civil Relief Act, if I'm quoting that properly, or some of the ones that we may not come across very often because we exclusively work in medical debt. Well, we encourage them to look up the answer if there are some code or section quotations and they're entirely unclear on whether it's 806 or 807 of the FDCPA, and we encourage them to look that up as well because we really want them to learn from this to make sure that they're aware of that information, and it does seem to stick much, much better when it is treated as we want to see what you know and we want to make sure that you know it by the time you finish going through these questions. Instead of sit down for a half an hour, we'll give you a quiz, and if you don't do well enough, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, and I really like what Christian said about using it as a diagnostic tool. Eterna has a lot of other features that you can use to present training to your employees, right through their computer. So you can create small job aids, you can create computer-based training, modules that you can shoot out to them. And if you recognize that a collector is struggling with, or an employee is struggling with the concept of misrepresentation or something as specific as overshadowing, if you have that job aid ready, you can just present that to the collector through the system, then through testing, ensure that they learned it.
Okay, so you're really able to keep on top of who is absorbing the information and who might need some extra help.
Yes, it's really robust in its reporting. It's very helpful.
It gives us the questions that are missed by most people, and that really allows us very quickly to zero in on a need in the office where it may be as simple as an email from our compliance director to a quick 10-minute all-hands-on-deck meeting. Everyone seems to have trouble with this subject. Here's the detail, and here's what we want to make sure that you understand about it. So it does give us a much more rapid way to address things that may be an issue for multiple employees.
Another reason for using these products, it kind of arbitrary maybe, but you do want to be able to show regulators that you do train. And, we can say we train twice a week. Here it is. It checks a box. I don't feel like that's the main reason for using it, but it helps with that too.
I would say from the sales perspective as well, we do promote that our employees are trained year-round and they're repeatedly trained on the same subjects to ensure that nothing is forgotten or any new information is passed on quickly and consistently. So it's certainly something that, again, we didn't put it in place to be able to brag about it when we go to sell prospects, but it's certainly something that we mention.
Regular compliance games and quizzes can provide valuable data on employees' weaknesses, alerting you to issues before they get out of hand. These games are usually used as a complement to an existing training program, not as a substitute, and can often be customized to fit your company's specific policies and procedures. Here's how Debra and Christian approach it.
For our internal questions, we will change them as changes are made to our policies, procedures, work instructions. For the other questions, the vendor creates the test, gives us the ability to add, subtract, or edit the test for our own use. We find that we don't have to, and we find that the vendor, just this week, I believe, they've included some additional tests for their questions for the FDCPA test. So they're relatively good at maintaining the content in terms of accuracy or providing questions related to new case law or new details that have come up in one of the particular subjects.
I do agree with what Christian just said. However, we have chosen not to use the vendor-provided tests at all. And that's kind of just based on my own experience with training and kind of the approach that we take to training. So it's really great that it's flexible and we can change things any way we want to. So what we have done is made our questions all behaviorally based. Just think of what should you do kind of scenario. A lot of question writers in the compliance space ask, well, what does the FDCPA say about this? Or what does HIPAA say about this? And it's hard for people to transfer that abstract kind of, what does the law say into concrete behavior in terms of what should you do? So our questions, while they do ask about FDCPA compliance, they're behaviorally based and they're kind of more sunk into our policies, which are certainly based on the FDCPA. Rather than quote the law chapter and verse, we refer people back to our policies that cover the same thing and that reference the FDCPA. We have very comprehensive new hire compliance training. We do spend a day going through our compliance training manual that we have created, which is all, again, behavior-based. It's our new hire training is kind of based on the compliance audit form that is used to score their calls. And so our new hire training related to compliance is called How to Pass Your Compliance Audit. And it might seem like that's something you can do in an hour, but it's not. It's very comprehensive, and we're through the process, going through each item on our form, helping people understand how the policies relate to their behaviors and providing scripts and all that kind of stuff. So it's directly related, and it's follow-up to that training.
We use it much in the same way. It is a follow-up and then, again, a sort of maintenance tool to ensure that people are up with the existing information they should already know, making sure that they haven't forgotten any of that, as well as any new information that comes out. Again, new case law or changes to our internal policies, procedures, and work instructions. Those are things that we'll add in there. But that's in addition to notifying them, providing them the new documentation, holding individual training sessions if necessary with the departments. So it definitely doesn't replace your traditional training, and especially for your new hires. We're trying to use it as a learning and diagnostic tool, and we don't want it to become punitive for fear that sort of takes the shine off of the process. It seems to be very well received right now, and we're a little concerned about that.
Yeah, I agree that could be a concern, definitely. I think one of the things that we're looking at is just people are skipping it and not doing it. To me, that's the component that we would look for, because you want to encourage people to take it. If they get incentivized for making sure they get their questions done, then, that would be a key way to do it. But, the way that questions are presented to the collector, at least the way we're using it, is they get an email with a link to the question. So they have to open the email, click the link, and take the question. So if they're just ignoring that email for whatever reason, then to me that is something that you do want to bring to their attention or incentivize them for actually doing it.
Absolutely, I agree with you there, Debra. We have that same reporting detail that we use. It sounds like you're a little nicer than me. I either myself or have my compliance director go around and tell people you're 3 questions behind and you weren't on vacation, so let's get those done today.
Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you both so much, Christian and Debra, for talking with me today.
You're welcome.
My pleasure.
Subscription-based gamification training products aren't your only options. There are also free or cheap templates online that you can use. These often incorporate elements from games like Wheel of Fortune and Family Feud. They can be PowerPoint-based, and you can just type in your own content, and it'll build a game that your trainers can run on a projector in class. And of course, ACA offers gaming elements in some of our training products too, like our FDCPA e-learning course. We'll put a link to the original Collector Magazine article on this topic on the ACA Cast page for this episode. Have fun and good luck! Thanks for listening.
Well, thank you, everyone. That was an informative discussion. This podcast and ACA's other podcasts are available on ACA's website or wherever you download podcasts. Thank you.